All right, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, so lovely to have all of you here. Please give yourselves a round of applause, those who are with us in the room. And dare I say, all protocol observed. And hi to our online community. Of course, this is an event that will not be made possible without your presence. So I will tell you a little later on how you can take part. But welcome to McDonald's South Africa Women in Conversations webinar. It started in 2021. And this is a platform, I tell you, that is aimed at fostering inclusivity. We have all conversations here. There is no conversation that is off the table. We talk about what bothers us. We talk about what keeps us up at night as women. And we discuss issues that would be uncomfortable even to our male counterparts. But we try also at the same time to inspire in order to make sure that we're not always depressed, but we can see the other side of the rainbow. My name is Bongi Wezwane, and I will be your moderator this morning. And thank you so much for joining us. And to the ladies who are walking in the room, thank you and a very warm welcome to all of you. We have just started. We have our online community. So hashtag women in conversation. While the phones are on silent, but I don't think they work, right? When they're on silent, they work, right? Gentlemen at the back, they work, right? So the one thing you can do for us is please tweet hashtag women in conversation. And I will come check your phones a little later on to see if you've been tweeting, because it's the gift you can give to us as women. Now, this year's theme is navigating unprecedented times. And what a fitting theme this is. I mean, you think about 2023. We are in 2023, yet as women, we are contending with our careers. Are we able to get ahead as easily as our male counterparts are? We're still having that conversation in 2023. We'll still have a conversation in 2023 that is looking at the brutality that was the COVID-19 pandemic and how brutal it was to us as women. We've seen different studies being done in this particular regard. Not only are the inequalities laid bare in 2023 still, but we are contending with the fact that we are paid a little less than our male counterparts in some of the avenues, right? And industries. It's 2023. We're still contending with the fact that in 2008, when the global financial meltdown happened, men's jobs were at risk. But in 2023, it is jobs that are post the pandemic. We're contending with the fact that we're always in the firing line because sometimes the conditions or the health issues we deal with are certainly not understood in our workplaces. So these are some of the things that we are contending with in 2023. And hashtag Women in Conversation is looking to have these particular conversations in order to make sure that in these industries where we are dominant and also where we are rising, we are able to be as comfortable as we possibly can. So nothing is off the table today. We're going to have these conversations. Are we queen bees, as they call us sometimes, when we are assertive? Or are we the equal partners at the table? So we will talk about all of this, and it's a very important conversation. But a conversation is always made possible by the platform that it is provided for. So if we have platforms like these ones, we are able to have conversations. And I'm told that this next speaker, who's going to be welcoming all of us here, and to tell us a little bit more about this particular platform is Osmo, as she said, I must call her, Osmo Maureen Mtoninsi, who is going to talk to us about why these platforms matter. But one thing I can tell you, she says she has a special song. So I'm not blessed with the gift of song. She is. So as we rise to welcome her, she is the chairperson, and of course the one person who is so critical in all of this. And I'll tell you who she is in just a moment. She's a dynamic and accomplished business leader who is currently directing the strategic and operational function of the McDonald's South Africa business in the Director of Operations capacity. And she's also the chairperson of the SA chapter of the Women's Leadership Network. So if you don't rise, there won't be coffee for you. There won't be lunch for you, because she made sure that we have all of this. Osmo, it's your time. Please may we give her a round of applause. I'm expecting a little better than that.
Thank you, Bongiwe. You make me feel like a real human, so thank you. Igama lamakosikazi malibongwe, igama lamakosikazi malibongwe, 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 kamala makosikazi malibongwe, ikamala makosikazi mal. Mutra praise vote, mutra praise vote, mutra praise vote, mutra praise vote. Mutra praise vote. That's how we start in South Africa, you know. We start with song and dance. We can never just start like, you know, being quiet. Because indeed, women stood up and they walked and they sang so that today we could be free. And also, we have amazing platforms like the WLN Women in Conversation platform. So having said that, I'd like to welcome and have a special thank you and a special welcome to our EXCO, to our leadership in South Africa, our leadership all over the world, because this is an organization that creates opportunities to have a platform like the WLN platform where women's voices can be heard, but also that we can have conversations that are pertinent to the growth of women and all of us. So welcome to everyone in this room, but also a special welcome to all the women and men that are online to join us to have this beautiful conversation this morning. I'd also like to have a special welcome to our panel. I know today we're going to grow, we're going to learn, and we'll be empowered because this panel of us, they're very, very knowledgeable and they're experts in their various fields. So welcome and thank you, Bongiwe. I believe we are going to have a wonderful conversation and we are going to walk away here and reach. Thank you very much, everyone.
It's always interesting. This is always interesting when the height factor comes into play. You see it with the mics. Thank you so much, Osmarine. Thank you. Do appreciate it. And, you know, when we talk about support for us as women, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's at school, whether wherever we are, in order to be able to rise, we think about the people who just encapsulate what I call the ultimate support. And these are individuals who stand with us, who make sure that it's possible and we're able to do what we can do. And this next speaker is going to do just that. And it's someone who's a champion, someone who always makes sure that these particular platforms are in fact, you know, held. And Mr. Greg Solomon, McDonald's SA CEO, is going to be giving us a word of encouragement. And Greg, I was told, they told me a little bit of a secret, so I'm hoping it's going to come through when you're speaking, that you are such a champion for this platform and what women can do, that it's going to shine through your speech from the first word right up until the last. No pressure. Let's give it up for Greg.
Well, is that not a setup or not? Am I right? I have to now change my speech to throw this one away. But to the ladies online, to the ladies of McDonald's, to the ladies of South Africa, to the ladies of the rest of the world that are watching this platform, I was behind the scenes looking at the numbers just cranking over 1,000, 1,200. I'm sure we'll get to 2,000 odd people that are watching this platform. It's just absolutely amazing, because we do need to confront these situations. We do need to confront these conversations, more importantly. I believe that our country's at a crossroads. We've got the Brexit conference that's happening across the road over here. I believe that the world is at a crossroads. And when we have crossroads, we've got choices to make. Bad choices, unfortunately, will haunt us forever. And good choices will praise us for many, many years to come. So as we approach this conversation today, there's no doubt we in some hard times, there's no doubt we have some headwinds, but we've got choices to make. So choose wisely, very, very importantly. I also don't think that we have a leadership problem or a leader problem. I don't think we got a leader problem in this country or in this world. I think we got a leadership problem. And we're all leaders, men and women around McDonald's South Africa. We need to put up our hands. We need to step up. Our voices need to be heard more profoundly. And the women's voices of McDonald's South Africa, the women's voices of South Africa need to be heard. We need to hear your views. We need to feel your conscience. We need to hear your wisdom in your opinions, and we need to be influenced by your thought process. But it takes you to put up your hand. It takes you to step forward, and it takes you to continue to be brave. Let's see the opportunity of the glass that is half full, not half empty. Let's use our energy to unite this nation. Let's use our energy to unite this business. Let's use our energy to rather build than rather argue. Let's use our energy to build relationships, because deep relationships will ultimately determine the destiny of our businesses, of our countries, and of our world. Let's put our differences apart and let's unite against a common challenge, against a common evil. That's the hardest thing for us to do. Remove our differences in many, many ways. Actually, last 3 or 4 months, we actually announced in McDonald's a new sponsorship. It's a sponsorship with a program called What About the Boys? I know we're speaking a lot about women, but often it tries to maybe highlight that women are the problem where women are not the problem. It's the men that are often the problem. We need to include them in the conversation. We need to not leave them behind, because the world has changed and we need two parties to work together. We can't just focus on what women need to do. We need to focus on how men need to change as well. And so we spend a lot of time in McDonald's now working on these young men, the future leaders of our business as well, how we change their mindset to welcome a more inclusive, more diverse environment in the workplace and in our world, and also as men in families as well. So as McDonald's approaches 370-odd restaurants, we employ just over 15,000 people. 60%, 62% of those 15,000 people are now women in McDonald's. Now, we've worked hard at that, and we've made a conscious effort, but all we needed to do is just open the door and give women an opportunity. They took the opportunity. We're 61% women in McDonald's South Africa, not because we have to, it's because those women are the best people for those positions, and I'm so proud of them. So 62% of our people out of the 15,000 are women. We are at 65% of all restaurant managers that run restaurants are women now in McDonald's South Africa. And 40%, just over 40%, I think it's 42 or 43% of our franchisees and our senior staff are women too. We've got a little bit of work just to get it to 50-50 there as well. So ladies and gentlemen, and in particular ladies, let's continue to make a difference. Let's continue to lead. Let's continue to have our voices heard. And most importantly, let's continue to harness our energy and unite this country, this world, and for us, very passionately, this business called McDonald's South Africa. God bless you and have a really, really fantastic conversation.
Greg, I was not lying. I really was not lying. You captured it from beginning to end. And one of the things that stood out is inclusivity, but at the same time, how do we continue to see the glass half full? Because that's always the difficult part, especially when we're contending with quite a lot as women in our daily struggles, just as people. You know, it's always difficult. And as you say, what about the difference that we can make, the wisdom that we bring to the table as women, as we speak? What kind of voice are we speaking with? Very interesting. Thank you so much, Greg, for that. And I'm almost certain our women who are online right now, and I'm hoping there's men too. Mamel, I hope there's men as well who are there and get to be part of this conversation. We're listening to just how much we need the boy child as part of this conversation as well. And as you know, we're about to get into our subject matter today as we look at navigating, through unprecedented times. The recent Mastercard Index of women entrepreneurs says women between the ages of 15 and 60 are regarded as economically active. And it also says that South Africa ranks as the country in Africa with the second most women-owned businesses with formal support available for women entrepreneurs. Now, that's a very narrow margin between us as well as Botswana. We scored about 54.9, while Botswana scored 56.3. So there are strides that are being made. We just need to build on them. And as we heard from Greg, it's not a leadership crisis, but it is something that you and I can think about and what we can be able to do with that. And just to help us talk about navigating these unprecedented times, and just a reminder to our online audience, please, you can engage with us, #Women in Conversation. If you have questions, if you have anything that you'd like to say, whether it's a comment as well, please use the chat box facility on the live stream and we'll be able to pick it up. And please make sure that you are, of course, you bear with us, because as we're having these conversations, we'll also be sifting through some of your comments and we'll be able to put them through to our panelists. And if you are able to, please specify who in the panel you would like to take that particular question. If not, you can let us know that it's open to anybody. And to the audience, those who walked in a bit late, please note, would like your cell phones to be on silent. Please keep your questions, if you have any here, very brief, or your comments very brief. We are, of course, contending with the time as well. To our panelists, who I will introduce in just a moment, we're spending at least 2 minutes or less on each answer. Please note, I'm going to do that thing that we as journalists sometimes do, where we have to come in sometimes while you are speaking. It's not meant to be rude, so I'm apologizing ahead of time if I ever happen to do that. It's just as part of our conversation, and also we are just mindful of the time, but let's have fun. So, we are spoiled for choice. I don't even know where to begin with our panelists today. Dr. Jessica Akins. Jessica, or Jess, as she's known, I've been calling her that. Yeah, we're on first name basis. She's an organizational psychologist with expertise in diversity, equity, and inclusion, creating engaging organization cultures, employee listening. And please, let's hear that out. Employee listening and research. She earned her Doctor of Philosophy in Industrial Organizational Psychology from St. Louis University, where her research focused on colorism in the workplace evaluations. Currently, she works as a diversity, equity, and inclusion manager supporting the international markets, and she enjoys connecting with family, with friends, and she also mentors some aspirant industrial organizational psychologists through content creation and playing competitive basketball. Welcome, Jess. Let's give her a round of applause. Abuti Thabo, I'm not doing this deliberately, I think. Maggie Mujapilu is a seasoned professional executive business consultant, governance expert, executive coach, speaker, facilitator, both globally and locally. She's currently the chairperson of several boards and, sits on board committees as well for companies like Rand Mutual, Octodec, as well as GSK SA. Now, she's also the founder of the HR Touch, a business management consulting company that also enables businesses to achieve their strategies. And she has extensive experience in human resource executive roles with both local and global companies, as she's worked for companies like Avon, Justine, Nedbank, and Coca-Cola as well. She's a well-read individual. And she has the highest qualification of an MBA from Henley, UK. and executive programs from Harvard. Now, Mama Maggie is a Christian whose life is governed mainly by strong values. Please, let's give her a round of applause. So yesterday, here I was asking myself, is this surname Xhosa? Is this surname Bedi? What is this surname? So today I walk in, me, hashtag Zulu girl. I go, oh, Abutitabo, you are holo, ne? He goes, holo. It's Bedi, holo. So I'm like, oh, okay, forgive me. So please, let's get it right. Abutitabo Holo has over 20 years of financial services experience in different roles. Now, he joined Old Mutual in 2023 after spending time in various companies, including Nedbank as head of financial education, MultiChoice as senior product manager, and Capitec as regional operations manager. Now, as part of his duties at Nedbank, he managed the relationship with Nedbank's black business partners, Old Mutual, Mutual and Federal, and Wiphold. Now, as head of the consumer financial education, he was responsible for digitization of the consumer financial education and representing the banking industry's financial education function in public matters such as policy as well as advocacy. And he holds a BCom degree in economics and business management and has completed his MBA in technology adoption in 2012 and is also currently a doctoral candidate with his thesis focusing on digital financial inclusion at the Poverty Premium. Let's give it up for all our panelists, including Abutitabo, who said he's part of us today. Now I have the blessed task of posing questions. Let's have fun. Let's have fun. A lot of women are looking to learn from all of us. But I'm going to start with something that Greg has said, and it kind of resonated a lot with where we find ourselves. And I'm going to start with you, Mama Meki, where we find ourselves right now. And so much is happening as women. We are contending with statistics of gender-based violence. We're contending with unemployment. We're contending with so much. How do we keep the glass full in 2023? Half full, in fact.
2023, thank you. I mean, when I looked at the topic, unprecedented times, what came to my mind is the word change. And change has been there for many years. It's a normal, it's constant, it's always there. Then the question for me was, how do we look at these unprecedented times and make them normal? What does that look like? And how do we make sure that as women, we are always ahead of ourselves, and these times we master ourselves, personal mastery that we need to think about. So I actually thought of some of the ingredients that will enable us to really make sure that we navigate these times in a manner that we feel we are content, we are comfortable in what we do. So I thought resilience is some of the things that came about. Everybody talks about it, but it's now a reality that as women, we must really build that resilience. I thought of flexibility. We must really build the flexibility because things are always different on a daily basis.
How do you build it, though? How do you build the flexibility?
So I think the reality is, if you think about it today, there's so many platforms to learn. And learning today is not just about the things we learn at school to do the job we do. It's now integrating your mental, your emotional, your spiritual, your social, coming together and looking at it as part of your career. Because everything is looking at the same person and making sure that you build all the things that enable you to think quickly, you build the things that enable you to see things differently and really look at things from what am I learning out of this versus how does it make me stuck? Because that's what it is at the moment.
And for you, Jess, I wonder, what does it mean to a woman in 2023 who's trying to navigate these unprecedented times that, we're finding ourselves in on multiple fronts?
So you mean like keeping it in the sense of the glass half full,
Yes.
like building upon that?
Yes.
I would say it's really important to have community amongst women. I think a lot of times when we get in the workplaces, competition can come about, and it's unhealthy. Healthy competition is great, but unhealthy competition and mean girling, that's not going to help us get ahead. And another thing, back to that unity and community piece, my mother was a single mom when she came from England, lived in Arkansas, didn't have much of a support network. And she had to ask for help. And I think that's part of it, right? You have to ask for help in order to get help, and people have to be open to receiving that. So she, because of that, she was able to connect with 2 other women who really helped her take care of us growing up when she had to leave and work. So it's about, having the courage to ask for help when you need it, but then also on the other end, people being open and being a community for you and helping you and supporting you get through.
Jess, you mentioned something that is so important, and I think it's critical for it not to even get lost. Sometimes we are so on the go as women, so I have to function as a woman, that we don't know how to receive the help. And you said we must make room to receive the help. How important is that?
It's really important. I mean, closed mouths don't get fed. And so if you're not asking, and if you're not even realizing within yourself that you can't do everything, it's just impossible. It's impossible for one person to do everything. That's why we have, even when we look at organizations, different functions and different roles, because not one person can run the whole thing. So you need that support. You need to be able to ask for it as well.
And, but Tab, I'm going to bring you into this conversation because one of the other things that I would say keep women awake at night is the financial pressures that we find ourselves in, where you are either the primary, caregiver of your children, the family, extended family, and all of that. And now here you are navigating these unprecedented times, and you still need to provide. You still need to be healthy mentally. So let's talk about what does it look like now for a woman in 2023 to be financially healthy?
Absolutely, Sis Bongiwe. Who wouldn't see? There's a lot to deal with. For instance, just take into consideration that 15% of the current working population is single mothers. Yeah. So reliance on single income can be a challenge on its own. So if you think men are being impacted by the economy or the state of the economy, or even multiple income families or households are being, imagine being a single mother. So yes, we live in unprecedented times, but they're not unique necessarily to women. They affect everybody, albeit at the different levels. But then just to bring it home, yes, absolutely. We live in the state where, as you wake up, petrol is up. We're still in an interest rate hikes cycle. The inflation is still high, and all of those bits and pieces do have an impact in one way or the other. Not only in working mothers, but single mothers in particular are affected by the unprecedented times, and that's what we're dealing with at the moment. Yeah.
And for you, because you are in the financial space, I wonder, what are some of the pictures that you've seen in this particular regard, if you're able to share some of the stories that you've seen of the mothers?
One thing that jumps out, particularly out of the study out of OMSIM, the All Mutual Saving and Investment Monitor, the most recent study, is that what we're starting to see is the amount of stress suffered by women in particular has increased from 45% to 61%. Oh. So the impact of financial distress on mental health is one of the things that is coming up. We're seeing that most of the women in particular are starting to rely on loans. Just to keep up with the daily expenses. So those are the things that we're starting to pick up. We're starting to see more and more what we call the sandwich generation, people that are taking care of others. So besides their own household, but they taking care of extended family. So those are the trends that we're starting to pick up at the moment due to that unprecedented times that we go through.
Sure, Mama Meki, these things then come and impact a woman in the workplace. And I wonder then, because from an HR perspective, from a management perspective, sometimes these are difficult conversations for a woman to have with a manager, to say, I'm not coping, I'm simply going under. Because sometimes you are told, oh, but you get your salary, why is it our business? What you do with it, why is it our business? What your family life looks like. So how do they begin then to try and have these conversations, but for managers to also be open to having these kinds of conversations, because they lead to stress?
Yeah. I think that's why today you'll see most organizations moving from talking about employee wellness to integrated mental wellness. And the whole wellness now, it's not just about my body physically, it's about how I'm feeling, it's about, and most companies are actually now embedding coaching in the organization, because as you get coached, these are the conversations that it become easy for women to talk to the person that you are navigating this life with. And really building on what Angie has just said, that as women, we really have to have the courage to come out, because if we self-rely on ourselves, that's where we get stuck. So I think enabling leadership managers today, that when you lead employees, it's not about leading the work you do, it's leading the total person that you have in there, and having the time to have the conversation where we talk about psychological safety. How do we make sure as leaders we create a psychological environment where every woman or every man have the ability to come out and be able to get the support they need from a workplace. And I think, these unprecedented times have really shown us that we used to talk about humility, we used to talk about sympathy. Now, sympathy, humility from leadership is becoming a real thing, not just a conversation that we talk about. Because if we show that, it enables some of this conversation to happen at the right time for us to enable leaders or women or employees that are in the organization to be heard and to be given the right support at the right time, not when we are already seeing the symptoms that we don't want to see.
Wow, Jess, I wonder, are these environments always empathetic and enabling towards a woman to have the courage to come up to even talk about what's bothering them, especially if you think about the context of menstruation? We sometimes can't even say to our bosses, can I please have a day because I'm not feeling well, I've got period cramps?
Yeah. So leaning into, I'm going to answer that menstruation piece, but leaning into that mental health piece and having the courage to speak up. There was a study done by Deloitte recently, the Global Outlook for Women, and that came up. 25% of women, it's only 25% of women who feel comfortable talking about mental health in the workplace. So it is a big thing. Like, we do need our leaders to be a little bit more starting that conversation of mental health and also well-being. It all kind of comes together, right? Making sure you have that work-life balance. When you're at work, you're at work. When you're home, take off, because that helps with your mental health as well. And then that same study found that 41% of women work through the discomfort of that menstruation, what you just mentioned. And I can even think about myself when I was working frontline. I actually passed out one time when I was on my cycle while I was at work. And it was I remember my boss being like, what's going on with you? But you don't feel comfortable going to tell someone, like, I'm very lightheaded right now. We know how intense that gets as women during that time. And even if I think about, some of the markets that are more in, period poverty, where they don't even have the access. Some of them can't even come to work, right? And which is why we have some of our restaurants in some markets who started offering those pads and sanitary towels to help them be able to come to work if they want to, right? But can you imagine, I can't come to work for a whole week and your family is dependent on you, you get what I mean? And now you're missing out on money. That can just be very hard. So it's really important to have those resources and to have those conversations and create those environments where that can come out.
And Butaba, is the sandwich generation, as you're calling us, I mean, you listen to some of what we're talking about, but we still are struggling with being able to come and speak to our male bosses and say, I'm struggling mentally. And I wonder how open then does the environment have to become for us to be comfortable to as women approach a man and say, I'm just not coping.
Interesting, and I liked what Greg spoke about earlier on when he mentioned, what about the boys? By the time you get to the 40s, to the 30s, it might be a little bit late. Perhaps what we need to start the conversations, start them early, where and it was said for me to learn a couple of years back about the reaction of boys when young ladies have their menstrual cycles. And I think, personally, the conversations should start there. But taking it beyond just talking to boys into bigger boys who are running corporates. I'm blessed to have a baby girl as a daughter. So I have almost a clearer understanding of what that means, which then empowers me to make certain decision. I wonder how many of my peers who are male have a similar kind of understanding, a similar kind of exposure, or do we just say it's a female problem? It's a girl problem. Why are you being girly about it? I wonder if that's how they're feeling at the moment, and shouldn't we be having those, if we're talking about diversity interventions to teach us as bigger boys to say, hey, this is what it means. This is how people feel. This is how it makes them feel. So that then it adds that level level of sympathies, level of empathy in terms of how we manage corporates. So that's the view, at least from a bigger boy.
So who has the conversation then, Potabo, with the bigger boys, as I would call them, who are not the young boys, because they were socialized a different way, a certain way, to in some instances be separate from the women. They don't sit with the women. They don't understand what the women are going through. They see the world through a certain perspective. So who then has the conversation with the bigger boys to make sure that the bigger boys speak to the smaller boys to then be able to have a change and a mindset shift as they're taking it into corporate spaces?
If we were to box it as their problem or her problem, I think that in itself might be problematic. It's our problem. It's my problem when madam is not okay. It's my problem if one of my fellow colleagues is not okay. The conversation should be driven both from a bigger boy and the ladies driving it to say, hey, this is what is happening with the world. Get on with the program. And so that we then are able to have conversations with the Letabo or Tsofato to say, hey, this is what it means. That conversation should start somewhere, but it can't be owned by ladies only or by gents only. It's our problem because it affects all of us, and I dare say equally, because what I don't maybe suffer in terms of health, I might suffer in terms of the economics of how the health is affected by in that environment. So I broadly think it's our problem. It's not a specific gender problem.
Mamek, you agree?
Yes. Yeah. Maybe just to add, I think if I was to look at it from a workplace perspective, programs such as diversity and inclusion becomes very important, and they need to move from thinking about it from a racial perspective, but thinking about it that we've got different people with different needs that are going through different issues. How do we make sure that we create a space where these issues are being taken out, and we can enable everyone, regardless of whether you are a male leader or you are a female leader, you are able to handle them. It really is asking for us as leaders in businesses to look at things differently. But I think even at our homes, I mean, I always feel like sometimes I can just ask government that there should be something that's called inclusive way of leading families, because it's gone are the days where we have something called a man and they have to do separate things from what a woman can do. We are in an environment where we are human beings.
Yes.
And how do we really connect with one another and start having programs that are not just women conversation? It must have women and men conversations in one room, so that we can get to hear what men are struggling with and what women are struggling with, and how can we solve this together, as you rightly say at the moment.
I'm sure, Jess, you'll agree with this, because inclusivity and diversity is certainly your forte.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I don't even think I should add on to that. I agree with it.
And just coming back to Mameki talks about the issue of race, because it's consistently what we think about when we think about inclusion in the workplace, diversity in the workplace. It's almost like a default setting to say the color must balance, gender must balance, but we seldom think about what you touched on, Mameki, the inclusivity of the different kinds of personalities that are found in the business. And I wonder, how do businesses begin to talk about this? Because it goes beyond the race politics.
I think what you're hitting at is more intersectionality and understanding that just because this is all one gender, white women have different experiences from black women. Black men have different experiences from white men. So if that's the case, then I think we should start, again, having those I think that's where some organizations are. They're not ready for that conversation. A lot of them are very more comfortable with gender. When we even start talking about race, and especially in different parts of the world, that will be a very uncomfortable. Some people will sit up here and say, we don't have that problem here, but the person who's saying that is not a person of color. So it's like, how do you know? Because you're not the person living in those experiences. So organizations should 100% start looking at that. I don't know that we have, and I think this is just globally, I don't know that they know how to start bringing that in just yet.
And what are the dangers then, just because if we do not have these conversations, dangers lie ahead. Perceptions are formed. Unhappy employees are bred. There's just so much that goes on. And I wonder what becomes in the dangers for a company that does not begin to confront some of these uncomfortable discussions head on.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, because there are different experiences, there are different needs. And when you just look at someone overall as a general, you're just going to provide, okay, I'll give you these benefits and that should be okay. But then you have this subgroup whose needs aren't being paid attention to. And I think it really comes out, especially when you think about mental health. I know like recently we found that black women need access to black therapists and et cetera. So we need to be providing those avenues, providing those resources to them to talk to people, because they will understand, right? There's a personal relationship with therapists that maybe a white therapist can't relate to what this lady is going through and et cetera. So it's things like that that I think come out with that.
And it's something that we can take for granted. But when, for example, if someone walks into a room and you start speaking to them, I'm going to come back to you, Putaba, in just a moment, but you speak to them in a language they understand, you connect. Versus trying to just grasp information from them and they give you information without that much of a connection. And I wonder how important is that for companies to understand the different woman in 2023 that is walking into the room, that is contending with so much that is happening in their own spaces, and for them to include that woman and not see this woman as trying to, oh goodness me, you just want another black therapist, yet another black sister, yet another black this. But it's a conversation that says, let's see and understand her for who she is and try to bring her to the table in the fullness that she is.
Yeah. I always look at it in this manner. When people ask me what is diversity and inclusion, I'm invited to a party. Can I come in and dance and feel like this music really resonates with me? But you can only put in the right music for all of us to dance if you have created an environment where you ask the right questions.
Wow.
The right questions that says anyone who comes here, who they are, what makes them tick, what makes them happy, what are some of the things that will really make you thrive with us, what are some of the things that we need to be aware of. That checking in, nowadays they're saying we must check in even more. I ask myself, how many organizations, when the day I walk in here, you check with me, but checking in a manner that is put somewhere so that as a organization, we can analyze what came out of the checking in, how do we support this checking in, so that everybody at the end, we put in those processes or those activities that enable everyone to feel they can say something and to feel they can bottle out and to feel there was a safe space for them to bottle something and they feel they were cared for when they were working. So I feel like care, it's becoming one of the values that everybody must adopt, and we must say when we care, what does that look like? Yeah. That's really, for me, it's becoming a big thing.
But Thabo, are we not asking the questions to people, to employees, as we check in, as we care, as senior management, because we are terrified of the answers that we think we might get, because they might require us to then take action to make the space comfortable?
I'm sure Mamigi has a better experience on that. But just a personal anecdote.
Yes.
I happen to work for one of the big companies in South Africa, McDonald's, Old Mutual.
Maybe you're
Did I just employ myself?
You've just employed him. Where's Greg? Greg, you have a new employee.
I'm a new employee. Old Mutual. And it's one of the at least the values of Old Mutual is around that. Providing those safe spaces where we can talk about it. Where we can do our check-ins, irrespective of how I feel. At least that has been my personal anecdote. I can't speak for a moment about the entire 30,000 of us, but at least my personal experience has been around that, where you feel safe to check in and be honest. There are platforms that are provided, for instance, to say if I don't feel comfortable talking to Mam Maggie, I can click on this app and I can talk to somebody. There's somebody there at the end of that app that would help me feel a little bit safe, at least.
And I'm glad you shared a personal story, because I'm going to ask you this follow-up question then. How did it change your work experience for you to have that at your disposal?
It does have it gives you that warm and fuzzy feeling. I don't know if there's a proper psychological term for it, but then your willingness to wake up and go to work, or your willingness to wake up and do what you have to do. So it does have a positive, at least what I can relate right now, it's the positive spin-off in terms of the way I feel and relate to my employer. And I would imagine if you are in any space of employment and you feel comfortable being yourself and bringing yourself to that, it makes a whole lot of difference. Huh?
Just as something that we often talk about, and we've called it the imposter syndrome. And it's, when one thinks about it and listens to different people talk about it, it's driven by various factors for a woman to get to a table and feel like they don't belong. Whether there's other women who are making you feel uncomfortable, whether there are men who are looking at you and saying, oh, you're a token appointment, therefore you are not meant to be at the table. I wonder if we're talking about this enough, and if we are unpacking it enough, and what it does to us when we get to the table and we feel inadequate.
Yes. So I would say, and I'll just speak from my own experience, when I was going through university and going through grad school, you feel that a lot, especially because you're coming from an education standpoint, coming into corporate spaces and like, oh, we should be doing this, or we should be considering this. And they're like, well, we do it this way. And it's like, okay, well, then maybe what I'm saying isn't important, or it's not the right way, and maybe what I'm learning isn't relevant. And I think you do go through that period of doubting yourself 100% to what you're saying. I think what comes into play there is when you have somebody, a mentor, or somebody just rooting for you and reminding you that you can do this. You got the knowledge, you got the skills. Just, get in there and, I'll root for you. Even when those conversations, when the doors are closed, your name is still in the room and it's in a positive light. They're not talking down on you or anything of that nature. So imposter syndrome is a very real thing, but having people around you, having allies, really help with that as well.
And if I don't have allies or haven't found them yet, how do I then as a woman begin to try and just cope and be part of it?
So got to be open to people, like chatting with people, getting to know people. I got really blessed when I started in McDonald's. As you all know, McDonald's is a global organization. It's very complex. And I actually met a lady in the bathroom and just started having a conversation with her. And she's plugged me to so many different people that's helped my network. Oh. And it's things like that. You do have to take a bit of initiative, but then also on the receiving end, they have to be open to it. And sometimes you may not find that, but you will find. You might come across some no's, but then you will find some yeses. And it's just talking to what Maggie said earlier, that piece of resilience and persistence. You just keep going. You got to have that belief in yourself. So
definitely resilience, and I'm going to come to the questions now, because we do have our online community that wants to know certain things, and I hope we are able to then answer some of their questions. And Mam Maggie, I'm going to give you this one. Amy says, how do we get people motivated during these unprecedented times? There's no money for increases and everything has gone up. How do we cope?
I think the first thing is, what do you have control over? What can you change? And what can you not change? What is available for you in where you are at the moment? And what are some of the things that you need to sacrifice? And the problem is there's so many changes that are happening which requires financial, but we don't sit back and say, what is it that I need to change from where I am? We continue looking at things from where we used to be versus where we are. There's this thing called being coherent with where you are becomes very important, because coherency just makes you deal with what's happening on a daily basis versus looking at where you're going and starting to create uncertainties for yourself that are not there. The reality is what you're going through all the time, it's not you alone. But it takes an individual to really every day sit and look at, what am I having? How can I use what I have optimally to keep myself positive to where I am at any given time? Because the current changes that are happening out there are not going to change because of me. They're there. You need to look at you.
I just wanted to add on that because I agree with that. And I think, too, it's about having a vision for your life. There are always going to be things that come up. But when you have a vision and you're focused on it, that is going to keep you motivated and keep you going. And you'll adjust where you have to. But once you set that tone for yourself, you're like, I know exactly where I want to be. I have that for myself. Then that will keep you going during times where it feels like there's no way I'm going to get out of this. That vision keeps you going.
And please keep your questions coming, as we've got a lot more now to our online audience. And here as well, if you do have some of the questions, please alert us and we'll be able then to pose them to the panelists. And I'm going to just latch on to that, Jess, and give you this question from Amo, who says, a working woman with kids makes it worse. We have to have it all together whilst supporting everyone and giving our best efforts. We are then made to feel bad when we want mental days or are regarded as weak when we end up having mental breakdowns. And it's what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I think it's about, again, if the question is, what do you do with all of that? You have to ask for the help and find people, safe people to ask that for. Start there, right? Because you may not feel comfortable. Again, the statistic, 25% of women feel comfortable talking about mental health at work. So find somebody where, a trusted ally where you can talk to. If you don't have access to counseling or anything, find someone you can talk to that can help you, that will give you the space. And if you have a leader who is empathetic, like I feel like I have a really good leader. I feel like I can come to her and I can talk to her and she'll give me that space if I need it. So if you find someone, share what you're going through. There's power in community. And there are people there that will look out for you, but you have to let people know what you're going through.
Yeah. But I think, and I'm going to use my own practical example. I have 2 kids. I became an HR director, and I had at that time, my kids were still very young. And I really had to say, this job is demanding. My kids are demanding. I've got a husband that I love, that I want to have time to. And I really had to say, what do I sacrifice so that I start having the right people that support me? And things like having a good helper who helps you with certain things. I loved good shoes, I love beautiful hair, but I had to say, let me cut on this so that I can afford to pay the best helper. Sometimes we are enemies to ourselves if we don't compromise certain things and prioritize certain things that enable us to be the best of who we want to be. So I really think also comes into, what can I sacrifice? I like what you said. What is the vision for my life? And what are the things that I need around me? And what are the things that I can do without so that I have all the resources I need to carry my life going forward?
And it's what you were saying earlier, be coherent with where you are, because that is going to help you. Butaba, I'm going to come to you and give you this particular question from Tuli. She says, the struggle continues for women. We can't afford getting help with our house chores. There's no extra cash to pay the helper. It's tough juggling between the job and household stuff. Women are also struggling from black tax and some of what we've just heard now about the sacrifices. Yeah. But I wonder, how do we begin to engage with what Tuli is talking about?
On multiple layers, I suppose. The first thing is, Mamegi spoke about sacrificing, for instance. I would love the choosing what I have to sacrifice to choosing what we as a family have to sacrifice. Because that conversation starts not just with you, but it takes the whole family to say, what are the priorities for this family? What is our priority as a family unit? And Papa, Mama, what are the goals in terms of where we want to go and how do we achieve those goals? For instance, when we do our budgeting, do we do our own individual budgeting or do we do a household budgeting? Do we say, you bringing X, I'm bringing Y, therefore we put this in a pot and this is how it's going to roll out? And that will take into consideration what my personal goals are, what your personal goals are, and therefore our family goals
Pardon me.
and I want to bring it back to yes, it's a tough environment for women. And it sounds so cliche when you say, let's bring it back to the basics. Let's bring it back to we've done the study most recently where we found 96% of our respondents said at the end of every month I do compile a budget. And when you ask how many of us stick to the budget, it drops to 36%. That tells you that if we don't have a coherent way of dealing with our finances, managing things that we need, what we absolutely need, versus the things that we want, that we would love to have. Look, I would love to drive a red big machine. Can I afford it? The question is no, not at this moment. Is it important? No, I just need to get from point A to point B.
I don't want us to lose that point because it's critical. Some people opt to not drawing up a budget because when you get to a point like Tuli's mentioning here, it's very easy to even feel like I don't need to draw up a budget because there's nothing.
Yeah.
There's no extra, there's nothing. And I want us to help her practically to say where does she begin because there is always a need for a budget, but you just need to know how to do it. So let's talk to her about the mindset, coming out of that mindset that says there's no extra, therefore I don't have to.
Yeah.
You know, I love the fact that we can easily relate, for instance, to a budget speech by government, which sets out what's going to happen, right? But at a personal level, we find it very... and that's exactly where there are tools. For instance, where one of the platform, 22/7, where you can actually download an app and actually manage what you're spending your money on. You can link your bank accounts to say, this is bank account A, this is bank account B, this is how many savings I have. That's and in a practical way, let something visual that tells you that, hey, hang on, you've budgeted 200 rands for your entertainment, you are at 250. You need to cut down and get those alerts that reminds you constantly to say, you've set a goal that you're going to start saving. And savings is not about having money, by the way. It's about having goals. It's, I have a goal that I need to reach. I know there's Black Friday coming. And constantly every year we act like it's a surprise. It's not a surprise. You knew in January that November, shouldn't you be starting to put a 25 rand, a 50 rand aside to say, I'm going to have to deal with it. So to me, the basic is so the budget thing is it's not just about money. It's about managing your own life. For instance, if I know that I want to lose 5 kilograms, and in my budget I have 100 rands stowed away for Magwinya, so my goal is there. But my budgeting and financing is somewhere else. Instead of having this linked up to say, these are my goals, these are my household goals, therefore the finances must talk to that, and therefore the budgeting and the tracking of what the money looks like needs to speak to that. So it's not about just budgeting for budgeting's sake. It's budgeting because I have goals. It's managing my debt because I have goals. It's managing my savings because I have goals. It's not because I have money. Money is an enabler, but money is not all that be all.
So it has to be goal-oriented.
Must be goal-oriented.
It has to be coherent. It has to speak to where
Live
you are
within
headed.
your means. Leave the Joneses alone. Live within your means.
Mama Meg, I'm coming to you, but leaving the Joneses means, and I'm speaking for some right now who we need to talk to, I'm being left out. I don't get to be on Instagram and take that picture with my bag, with my this, with my that. So how do I not become part of the in crowd?
Be you.
Be you.
Be yourself. Be yourself. What drives me, what drives the next person are two different things, right? And I find, and it's the personal anecdote, if something makes me happy, I want to stick to that. But if I do it because it makes Bongiwe happy, I might be in trouble. I don't know what Bongiwe does. I don't know how she gets her money. But there I am posing on Instagram with a red cup that I don't even know, or buying things that don't make me happy to impress people that don't care much about me, and using the money that I don't have. So sometimes it's just going back to say, what do I actually want, and live within those means and start tracking my life, not the Joneses' life, to say, this is what I want to go.
Very interesting, Mamiki.
Yeah, I think for me, just to add to what Witawa is saying, it's one needs to acknowledge where they are, really appreciate and acknowledge. And after acknowledging, ask yourself what is possible and what is impossible. And really go for what is possible and discard what is impossible. Yes. I think being scared of looking at your budget, you are just creating a problem that you are running away from eventually. You've got to look at the budget and be realistic. If you have to have conversation with the relevant people, let it be. I mean, to be honest, banks listen. People that you owe listen. Only if you really confront and they really allow you, they can even allow you to pay 50%, 20% of what you used to pay before, if you really confront. I think it's acknowledging and really going head on and living your life, not just talking about these things and being scared about approaching them, because you being scared doesn't take away that one day wherever what you are scared of, you're not going to get there one day.
So you're just postponing the inevitable. And Jess Tuli says, and it's to an earlier point that you and Maameke were mentioning, check-ins with employees are very important, because previously the employer would tell an employee to leave their problems at the door. Some still do, though, to say, leave your problems at the door, I need you to get on with the business of the day.
That's a very old school mentality, especially when you're thinking about Gen Z. It's not going to be as effective like for our upcoming workforce coming in, especially even with millennials. It's not a good leadership approach. Actually getting to know who your people are, what problems they're facing, and finding ways in which you can support, or even how the organization can support, will be much more effective. So if you're dealing with an environment like that, it might be time to start thinking about other options, or even moving into other teams where there are just better leaders. I mean, from an organization standpoint, that's why it's so important with these employee listening, having those moments. And to be fair, some organizations just don't know what they don't know. So that whole point of asking the right questions, that's where you need someone to come in and say, hey, like, these are the questions you should be considering as your X, Y, and Z. But having those moments, measuring that, will really help in the sense of, okay, what leaders need a little bit of help, maybe need a little bit of coaching to adjust their leadership style, and what leaders are doing really great jobs that can offer that support for them as well.
And I wonder, how do we begin then to have boundaries on the flip side of that coin, to say that, okay, so now you are getting to know your employees, you're getting to know what they're going through, and you kind of know who's at the table, who's in the boardroom, who's in the company, but at the same time not to get so overly involved in their business and their problems that you end up, just blurring the lines. So how do we begin to have some of the boundaries there?
I mean, it's like you said, you got to have if you take on somebody's problem too much, it becomes too much for you. Like, you got to have a moment for yourself. You're still here for work. And the reason why you're having these conversations is to learn about the individual, learn about what they're going through. But you also have to, as a leader, if you're starting those conversations, you also have to know for yourself, like, okay, I can't get too involved in what this person is going through, because I can't save them. I can provide them support, I can provide them guidance, but there's only X amount of things that I can do. And, it's also encouraging them to take it on, giving them the resources so they can do it themselves. Whenever you take away autonomy from people, it doesn't end well, and they'll continue to fall back. You have to allow them the autonomy to deal with their problems, but give them the space to share. And if you have resources and guidance, bring that to light too.
Maameke, you were raising your hand.
Yeah, I think it comes back to, as I said earlier on, looking at what are some of the ingredients, when I'm talking about now, competencies that become critical in developing in leaders. So dealing with difficult conversations, because the good thing about skills like those enable you to deal with the facts versus the person, and you are able to navigate from moving from one discussion to another discussion without muddling the different discussions that requires. So really developing listening skills that enable managers to listen with care and be able to transition from care to what are the facts are on the table in relation to how you are feeling versus what needs to be done. So it's really asking us and saying, what is the type of a brand of a leader you need to build, and what are those ingredients aligned to this unprecedented times that we are in, that we need to build in our own leaders? Because the previous competencies that we had, they were good for those times. Now there's new requirements. If it was a cake, it's a new cake that requires new ingredients. And what does those ingredients look like?
Are you finding, though, that the companies are open to that possibility?
I think the current issues that they're facing is forcing companies to look into those, and there are companies that really are looking at what needs to be different in terms of what we used to lead, and they're asking those questions a lot of times. And there are companies that are really just responding to symptoms as they come through. So there's different companies looking at things differently, but definitely it's a big thing today to look at the brand of a leader. It's a lot of companies are looking at that. They're even looking at the culture, what type of culture that used to be there, what needs to be different. And you can see even now companies are saying, how do you measure managers now? How do you measure them to manage and manage these things that manage our employees so that they get engaged, they get motivated, and then they feel safe to be around these businesses? We're seeing a lot of those in companies.
And Butaba, I'm going to give you this one, not because of what you shared with me earlier on about the rural areas, but I want to ask you, I want to give you Bonnie's question. She says, I've been working in community development to empower women and young girls, but it's hard to reach out to many without enough resources. How can we take conversations like these to villages and to disadvantaged women?
Yeah.
Akira, you said you're part of us.
Now I realize it's not that easy. It looks easy from a distance, but absolutely. Over 62% of South Africa is made out of rural environments. Environments in rural areas are characterized mostly by persistent poverty, lack of social amenities, etc., etc. Conversations like this, yes, need to go to those environments, but we need to start somewhere. And I would love to start, even in urban environments, starting to influence the change in urban environment that would drive us to rural communities. But we must also be careful not to create senses of dependencies. For example, there was a question around black tax earlier on, right? Where if we don't have those leadership tough discussions that talks to boundaries, then we can also create sense of dependencies instead of empowering people, right? Instead of just giving money to my uncle, how do I empower uncle to start creating his own economic generating, money generating ventures? How do I create an environment for Ukoko Ekentani in the Eastern Cape to start generating income for themselves? So community development we must be careful that it doesn't create dependency more than the empowerment, yeah?
How do you contend then with those who are saying you can't call it black tax, you can't want to not do, you can't be telling us that they must be self-sufficient at some point because this is your debt that you must pay for the village having raised you, sent you to school and provided for you. Now you kind of need to look at it as payback.
Absolutely. And I know that it's very contagious to call it black tax because there are
some who say it's not.
Some, it's not necessarily a black tax, right? And yes, there might be expectations, but then how powerful will it be for me to go back where I come from and instead of just giving people money, but to create opportunities for themselves to develop themselves, right? To use my networks, to say, let's go to those deep rural areas and create economic opportunities instead of creating dependencies. So instead of just looking at how do I budget for 1,000 rand to send to my cousin in Emahlabatini, how do I take that 1,000 rand and say, Kaz, how do I help you build a business with this 1,000 rand? So we have to turn this dependency syndrome to possible self-development. If I have to, instead of spending that 1,000 rands, just giving it away, have that critical conversations to whoever is dependent on that to say, how else do I empower you to then create alternatives? Because once we look, it's a proverbial teaching a man how to fish instead of providing a fish, right? Instead of creating a culture of dependencies, is how do I take that 350 and say, how do we build businesses with that 350 multiplied by 1 million people that depend on it, instead of just creating dependency? Yeah?
And I suppose what I'm hearing from you is these solutions or these kinds of, these acts of kindness must be sustainable. You've got to do it in such a way that Mamiki was talking about, that have the conversations that must be had, looking at the reality of your situation. Don't overpromise and what you cannot deliver. So let's then go to this one as we're taking some of our final questions then, Jess. Elsie says, more and more women are the heads of their homes while also supporting extended families and sometimes even their communities. What support can they receive from the corporates that are being represented here today?
So like what benefits and health benefits?
Yeah, so maybe how can companies better try and assist?
Yeah, so if I was thinking about ideally what companies can provide, I think about daycare, providing those moments, allowing, especially if you have to be at the workplace, if you have like a daycare center for kids, that's an idea I have. One day I hope to bring it to life. And that, I think that'd be really helpful for a lot of women out there, especially single parents. And then again, flexibility. We know working from home has its benefits and it also has its, challenges, but if you have someone home that's sick and they need your care at that moment, like it's great if you can get your work done at home and have that flexibility. You may be able to get it done at 10 at night, but you can still care for, whoever it is that needs that support at that time. So for me, those are the top things that come to mind, especially around flexibility. And then just, again, it goes back to leadership empathy, just, understanding that their job is not their whole world, especially for a lot of women. There are a lot of different things they have to tend to. And, having that empathy, understanding that and seeing where you can work with them will go a very long way in keeping your employees as well. Not just keeping them happy, but making them want to stay and work for you too. And then again, sorry, just last one. I know it's a lot before that, but just community. When you have a support group around you of women who are supporting you and want to help you, that helps too.
So as we round up then our conversation, I wish it didn't have to come to an end. I'm sure women online and here, like myself as well, are enjoying this particular discussion. I just wish we had the whole day just to talk about, some of the issues that we are going through. But I'd like us to give each of you a chance to talk about we're going back now to glass half full. How do we rise above all these challenges, above all of what we've heard today, all of what we've talked about? How do we encourage women to rise above it? What do companies do, in your instances, for example, to make sure that the picture is different, make sure that the environment is different? And I'm going to start with you, Jess, just to give us a sense of what then?
Yeah. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier about having a vision for yourself, knowing what it is you want for your life. That way you're using your company to get there, right? If you're working somewhere, you're using the skills, the experiences that you get so you can go to where it is you're looking to go. And when you're able to articulate what it is you want from your life, you're able to articulate it to your leader. And if you have a really good leader, they're going to try to work to get you those experiences and then put you in positions where you can, thrive and get those experiences for yourself. So I think it really starts with I know we're very busy, but if you can take a moment and just reflect and just really give it some thought on what it is you want, I think that'll go a long way. Because then it's just a matter of how do I use what I have, the resources I have to navigate to get to where I need to go. And it keeps you focused, especially in times where there's just a lot of chaos.
Vision, vision, vision.
In fact, pulling it back to almost the financial world, exactly that. Clearly defined SMART goals, right? SMART goals that are clear and in your mind you can see, and put them on some sort of a vision board, right? Write them somewhere, don't just keep them in your head. then get your financial world in order to support that, right? Your budgeting must be aligned to that. Your money management must be aligned to that. Have those uncomfortable conversations. Have the, Papa, I think this is where we need to go. Or Mama, this is where we need to go. Or kids, no, you can't have an Xbox. Or kids, you can't have this. Have those uncomfortable conversations, but stick to your lane. This is what I can afford. Stick to that and manage that. But then, to me, as an honorary lady for the day, is keep it as simple as possible and live out your life.
And have these difficult conversations even with yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mama Maggie?
Yeah, I think in closing from my side, I like this saying that I've always said to myself over the years. The winning moves are in your mind, and the losing moves are in your mind. What are those things that every day you nurture yourself with so that you fill up your mind with the things that can make you win the game? That's really how I want to close this. Thank you.
Sure. So the win and lose is all here.
Yes, the winning lose.
This is it.
Yeah, you can only win from what you think.
Wow. What a way to end off. But we have another powerful way from Pravashni. Your comment just blew me away, Pravashni. And we end off, as you say, we as women need to support each other. Many times in the workplace, often women don't champion one another. Be the best cheerleader to become an awesome leader. Managers and leaders must ensure that organizational culture must be inclusive of more holistic approaches in creating more platforms for female employees to strive without comparing their worth to their male counterparts. Thank you for this empowering conversation and empowering messages. And that's how we end off. Thank you so much to you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't you just wish you could have this the whole day? It's been amazing. Thank you. To our honorary lady for the day, Abu Tabo, you were amazing. Thank you. Mama Maggie, thank you so much. Jess, thank you. Do appreciate it. And let's give them another round of applause. You see, this is what happens when you forget that you are walking attached. So much to absorb. I'm sure you have a lot to absorb, right? I did say, gentlemen at the back, have we been tweeting? Have we been saying #women in conversation? Can I come check to see if it's all done? Otherwise, I'm going to tell Greg that it wasn't done. But thank you so much for being part of this conversation. And I suppose for me, this is where it all hits home, because we cannot have the conversations and not do anything about them. We cannot keep listening and not do anything about what we are hearing. So may we hear and take everything that we've heard into our different workspaces as we do self-leadership, as we do the leadership of others, as we do our work on a daily basis, whatever it is that we are doing on a daily basis, may we remember the winning and the losing is all here. So thank you so much for allowing us to have this amazing conversation. And from me as program director, as moderator, my job ends here as I take you safely back into the hands of Mama Maureen Toninzi, who is coming to close for us, but also give us a word of thanks. I hope I impressed. I hope we did well with the panelists, so you don't fire us after this. So I hope we did well, and that's where I will then excuse myself and allow you to come and say a few words. Thank you.
There we go again with the heights. So, Bongiwe, you were a star. You did very well as the program director and the moderator, and we give you a hand for that. Well done, girl. Wow, how enlightening, valuable boxes and boxes of nuggets of knowledge and empowerment. Indeed, we walk away with more winning solutions in our mind. Thank you. A big thank you to our panelists. You're fantastic, very empowering. Our honorable lady, Booty, you did so well. All the way from London, our panelists, Jess, thank you so much. Wow, everyone online, our McDonald's staff were praising our powerful panelists. Sis Maggie, I want more of you, Sissy. I want more of that. So well done. Thank you very much, our panelists. A special thank you to our CEO, Mr. Greg Solomon, who's also the sponsor of the Women's Leadership Network. Also, in our organization, the Women's Leadership Network has got allies. And I'd like to introduce you to one of our allies. But before I do that, before I forget, I'd like to say a special thank you to the Old Mutual team, if you can rise. Thank you very much, Old Mutual. You have been partnering with us in this journey of the Women in Conversation, and it has been a beautiful partnership. So thank you very much. We appreciate your contribution towards empowering and bringing, this platform to the women, both in McDonald's, inside McDonald's, and outside of McDonald's. Because indeed, as a corporate citizen, we realize the importance for us to have such platforms as this to empower the nation. Thank you very much to our EXCO, our executive CPO there, young lady Yvonne, our entire EXCO. And I'd like to call up one of our allies. He's also an operations director for McDonald's. Would you come, Mr. Prashant Maharaj? So as women, we cannot do it alone. We need allies to make this happen. And this is one of our allies. We've got also some of our executive teams, men, who is really great allies in making this happen. So Jessica, when you go back, you must tell everyone there that the men at McDonald's South Africa are very supportive, together with our fantastic sponsor, our CEO, because he takes the lead in all this. And maybe I'll just say thank you very much to everyone. Thank you to the more than 1.5 women online that has joined us today in this fantastic conversation. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone. Prashant, is there anything you want to say?
Now, Greg, I think well done to Maureen and the panelists, but also our duty as the leaders of the business, as the male leaders of this business, is to welcome more men into this meeting. You and I have the long-standing relationship with the WLM, and I think we can definitely bring one or two men up into this building to support this wonderful initiative. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, every day. Have a great day. I'm going to call upon Old Mutual to come and hand over something to our panel. It's a token of just saying thank you to this wonderful conversation, valuable and very enlightening. And they're joining us in sharing some gifts to you.